All right, here we go. Continuing our series in Ephesians. If you haven't been checking it out, 5 minutes on each chapter. You can find them here on YouTube and really love just being together in this. I have to tell you guys, spending this time and coming together and saying, okay, what is it that we take from here has really encouraged my own heart and kept me kind of on the track. You know, we really need each other to be consistent and intentional with the way we spend time with God and in His Word. So, anyway, it's been awesome, and we're in chapter 5 today, and I just want to point out chapter 5, verse 1. It says, "Follow God's example, therefore, as dearly loved children, and walk in the way of love." Okay, so that's just verse 1. Follow God's example as dearly loved children and walk in the way of love. So there's kind of three components to that first verse. The first is that we're following God's example. So this idea is that we're not alone in this world. Jesus came and put on flesh and made his place in the neighborhood. That's the Message version of that verse, this idea from John chapter 1 that Jesus came and dwelled among us so that we don't have to be alone in this world. We're not trying to get to a God that decided to stay far away and says, here's all the things you need to do to get closer to me. We serve a God who came in the most humble form of a baby and then walked in this world so that we have that example. So first of all, we're being led. We're not alone in this. So as following God's example. And then the second thing is as dearly loved children. I don't know how much time you spend with children, but if you can just remember this idea of the amount of delight and joy that comes when you are a child, when you are loved as a child. I was talking with a friend who said that she realizes that her son has never known a day in his life, he's little, just under 1, where he has not been the apple of someone's eye. And if you think about God saying, hey, that's how I think about you. So because of all those things, walk in the way of love. So God is not dictating commands here outside of the context of both being led by him and being loved by him. And so that sort of sets the tone for the rest of the chapter. So when we get into, so here's some of the things that you need to do to live that kind of life. We're doing it in that context. And so many times in Bible study, people they take out of context verses that make God feel harsh or authoritarian or just punishing in the rules that he has for our life in a way that feels rigid and confining, when in reality, what we're hearing is that actually he thinks more of us than we probably do of ourselves. So here's my example of that. Let's say today that you knew that Oprah was coming to your home. You got a call from Oprah's producers and they were like, hey, we're in your town. Oprah's here filming and we're just looking for a place, a respite for Oprah. Is there a place you could come? If Oprah was coming to your house today, would you, regardless of what you think about Oprah, just insert whoever you admire, but if they were coming to your house today, wouldn't you put some effort into like straightening up, maybe having some refreshments available? Wouldn't you want to create a space that was peaceful? Wouldn't you kind of get cleaned up a little bit and be like, oh my gosh, Oprah's coming to my house? You know, I think sometimes we get lazy in our faith and we forget that like, we get to serve the living God who's asking to be with us and who, because of his presence, we just want to be more and we want to do more. So when the rest of the chapter goes on to say, hey, put aside this corruption and don't spend time on things that are shameful and secret and get kind of caught up in those things and don't get drunk on wine. And it's kind of saying like, don't live a lower life than the very high calling that you've received. Like you are considered so great in God's kingdom that you actually kind of want to get cleaned up for it. Like it's not to punish us or to be like, oh, that way of life's better. It's more like saying, why would you want to live that way when you have opportunity and access to live this way, to live as God's dearly loved children, to walk with him, to walk in the way of love, to experience a dynamic relationship with a God who loves you, with people who love God. You know, that's a big part of this next couple chapters is that we have community together. So if you're thinking to yourself, man, but I feel discouraged and I feel like Oprah's coming to my house and I can't get out of my sweatpants. That's how I feel about my spiritual life right now. Remember that all of this is also set in the context of loving and encouraging one another. So that verse goes on, and at the end of this kind of section, it says, don't forget to speak to one another with psalms, hymns, songs from the Spirit. This is verse 19. Sing and make music from your heart to the Lord. And that's not just about you singing and making music alone outside of community, but it's actually saying you got to pursue other people who are pursuing the same thing you're pursuing. And in doing so, you're going to find that as you refresh one another, you are also refreshed. As you encourage one another, you are also encouraged. So there's this spirit of, hey, God actually thinks more of us than I think we think of ourselves. And God expects us to be living this out in community so that the inevitable discouraging times where we feel like we can't get out of the sweatpant of our soul with Oprah coming, we are reminded that there's others who lift us and carry us as well. So that's the first part of chapter 5. In the next video, I'm going to talk about this next section in chapter 5. I get asked about it all the time. What does it really mean to submit to my husband? So I'll see you guys for that one next.